So we're on the outside of this thing, and it's time to start putting these panels back on. When I built this trailer frame, I was really trying to be cognizant of the fact that the original design was, it had a lot of issues with galvanic corrosion. We've talked about that in some past videos. I want to talk about it again because it's a big deal. If you look at this piece of metal, you can see it's got holes in it. And on the back side especially, you can tell this white powdery stuff. That is the aluminum corroding. Steel rust, aluminum does that. They're both an oxidation process, but this is as a result of it touching steel. Now, probably from the factory when they built this, it was touching painted steel or maybe powder coated steel, I don't know, but it's easy to see that and think, well, they're not touching, there's a layer of paint in between. But as this thing goes down the road and it shakes and rattles, that's going to be a problem. So what I've decided to do, all the places this meets steel, is I'm using 3M mounting tape, and I'm putting this on all of these surfaces where it mounts. So for one, be this gold stripe, you can't really see it behind me, this gold stripe here where this trim piece mounts. Up under the body panels that are on the main part of the body, I'm adding this tape, but I'm not peeling off the second layer. It would be way too hard to fit all of this if it just stuck the second it touched it, and it would just be a nightmare. So I'm literally just using one side of this, but it's a maybe 1/16 of an inch thick tape that will help keep the metals apart is my goal. It can't hurt. The other thing I'm doing is when I fabricated this and I welded the curved corner pieces, and I'll show you guys a little closer, but I have a trim that's going to go on the edge of those. This is a silicone rubber, and this will keep them from rubbing. So let me show you what I mean and where we're going to be putting these. All right, so I have this one on. I was just kind of doing some testing. You can see underneath here this piece of angle iron that was added. This was added strategically because that's where the metal stops. I don't know if you can't really tell in the corner, but that's where the metal is going to get screwed into. So that is where the tape is going. The other place the tape is going, and this is not on very well, but it doesn't really matter, is up under this lip, and it'll go all the way down. And that will hopefully help. And then finally on these plasma cut curves that I have this silicone rubber strip that has tape inside of it. See if I can show you here real quick. There's tape inside of this. You just peel off. And so first thing I'm going to do is go around and just get all of this rubber and all of this tape put on, and then we're going to start fitting these panels. They're not going to fit the way they're supposed to. I've already had some issues where the front of this is about a ½ inch too far forward off the frame, and so you can see this moves quite a bit, which is okay up here. You can see how much that moves. But if I push that much here on the curve, it will crease this metal really bad. So I think I'm gonna have to make a spacer to go behind here from the inside that'll hold that out and support when I run screws into it. But little by little, we're just getting these fit, and I'll show you guys how I'm cleaning these up and getting them ready. But first, let's get this tape on. Okay, all the tape and the little rubber moldings are on, and now I'm dealing with this gap here. I want to show you guys what I made. I took 2 revisions of this to get something that I like, but I took a piece of 1x3 PVC and I just cut a notch in it so it drops right in this little tongue that's still here from the sideboard. And this did a pretty good job of filling in the gap that I needed to. It's a little bit, just probably have to push that corner back up in there, but that's going to fill in that gap. You can still see light through there, but that's okay. That'll get pushed back, and that actually sits flush with the floor. We'll still have some corners here that are open, but that's fine. We'll fill that with caulk. There's plenty of strength without that being fully supported. So now we can start putting the front back together again. All right, we've got a little rain shower coming through outside, so now's as good a time as any to clean up a couple of these pieces. So I just want to show you guys kind of what I'm dealing with on these and what I'm doing to prep them before I put them back on. A lot of them have this nasty insulation still on here, which is fine. The bigger issue though, I don't know how well I'll be able to show this, but a lot of these holes have pretty uneven metal on the back. You can really see it's all rippled there. Some of these have blown through and there's metal on the back. all the way down, just really rough. So what I've been doing is getting out any fasteners that are still stuck in here, which there aren't too many. I got another piece here. This has a nail in it, so like I'll get that out. And then some have this really bad oxidation. So thankfully these pieces are not gonna need all that length, and so I think I can just cut that off. It also probably wouldn't be terribly difficult to remake these, but there's some little details like this little trim piece that's on here that's kind of cool. So we're gonna try our best to reuse these. If I mess something up, something doesn't go right, or it just doesn't fit, then we'll kind of revisit that. What I'm gonna do first though is just kind of do a little tapping with a body hammer. I've got a really cheapo Harbor Freight hammer set. A regular hammer would work fine. I just happen to have these or something else. All I'm doing is just putting this on the table and just giving it some taps where these high spots are to flatten it out. All right, I just found about half of a nail still in here. So I'm trying to grab that right now. It's really kind of compressed in here. These little T-nails, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, these little T-nails are really buried in here. And best I could tell, it's what they used to assemble this while they were waiting to put all the screws in. They kind of tack it up with these and then put all the trims on with all the screws. But these caused a lot of galvanic corrosion and they're really hard to get out. Got it, tiny little thing. All right, now before I go beating on this too much more, a lot of this metal that's sticking through really just needs to be sanded down, because if I flatten it and I put a screw through it again, it's just gonna have the same problem. So we're just gonna sand off a little bit through the back. The other thing we're gonna sand off is on the front here. We've got like some caulk and some paint, these hard edges. And so as I'm hammering this, it's actually pushing the metal where all that is. I have done some of this with the grinder, but I'm a little hesitant to get too crazy with that because it leaves a lot of marks. All I have is like 80 grit sandpaper on that. So I'm actually just gonna knock off this high stuff with the 80 grit sanding disc on the grinder, and then probably come back with an orbital sander and just smooth these edges a little bit. So I'm gonna throw a mask on here and quit talking. It's not great to be breathing aluminum dust. So I'm gonna throw a mask on and clean this up a little. Alright, so after I banged them all down, sanded everything, I just took a wire wheel on a grinder and just knocked all that crap off the back, knocked off some of the rust, some of the oxidation. It's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better. I feel a lot better putting this on. And when you look at like the edges and things, they look a lot flatter. So that's good enough for me. I'm gonna just keep cranking along with this. We'll do all these front pieces and then we'll start putting them on. So I've been working on getting some of these curved pieces on the bottom, and it is an obnoxious fight the whole way, as I knew it would be. You know, my metal pieces that I cut are not quite perfect, which, you know, I maybe could have spent a little more time to try to figure out that exact curve, but when I checked the factory ones, they were really all different. They just seemed like they were really roughly cut, and so I just went with the one that seemed the most prevalent. It's not perfect, so I've got some gaps here inside where the wheel well is, but I've got this rubber trim on here, so it is what it is. I'm not going to stress about it. You're not even going to see it when this thing is closed up and driving down the road with the step here, and this is really the only place it's going to be visible, so I'm not going to stress. I've also kind of shimmied these out a little bit, out and in, to get it so they line up exactly with my pieces, because I was not quite exactly where the old one stopped, which I knew I was going to be a little off probably, but that's fine. I just got these front 3 panels on, and I'm gonna say, all things considering, they fit pretty well. The curves are slightly different on the bottom, but they went on there pretty good. Got some scratches I gotta sand out that were just on the metal here, but we'll take care of that. And then a little bit of a gap in here, but I've not stuck this rubber fully on yet. This has got adhesive on the back, so when we're ready, I can peel that adhesive and kind of push this out, and it fits on there really nice, really tight in there. So I haven't decided if I'm going to pull that adhesive just yet, or if I'm going to wait a little bit. Leaning towards waiting, just because I think like masking for primer and stuff, it's going to be easier if I can pull this back maybe, I don't know. But I wanted to get that in now at least, so we're not scratching the frame. But this is looking really good. So now we just have to do the back. Really haven't fully dissected the back yet. I was kind of in a hurry when I took all this apart, and these 3 are still kind of attached. And we've got these 2 side pieces, but I think this is going to go a little easier. So we'll get these pulled apart, cleaned up, and start tackling getting on these corners and this this back here. Okay, we are now at a point where all of the sheet metal is actually hanging from the camper at least. The trim's not back on yet, but sheet metal is on it. Got all the corners, all the sides, front and back. They're at least tacked along this top edge here. You can see I've just got screws holding it in. So on some of these I've gone underneath and I've added screws up under here, but I've realized there's just a lot of adjusting that has to happen. So that's what I'm gonna start working on now. I've got things like this gap here where I need to come in and shove this in and probably put a rivet in it. See if I can clean out some of that old sealant in there. Start getting some of these edges riveted together. I may even rivet here. If the camera would focus, I may even rivet here just to make sure that this piece of trim can't fall out. A lot of stuff like that. Once that happens, then I can get the rest of the bottom screwed on, and then we can actually take these out and start getting our trim put back on. You may have noticed I have a new toy. I got tired of doing this by hand, so I got a pneumatic pop riveter, and this is so much easier. Okay, so at this point where we're at is that all of these pieces under the edges are attached again, finally. That was a tricky thing. I knew it was going to be because when I built the frame and I took apart all the old sections there, they were all different curves. And I opted to just find the one that I thought that was closest to average and use that. It worked great in some spots and it worked awful in others. So it's not perfect. I had to use a lot of rivets on the corners just to make everything lay flat. There's some ripples kind of underneath, but that's okay. We're not adding a belly pan back onto this. I think I've mentioned that in previous videos, but I'll say it again here. I wanted it to look original, but I want access to the bottom. I'm not going to use this thing full time in the winter or anything. I'd rather have access to plumbing and be able to see what's happening under there. So this really will be the last of the body sheet metal, the big sections that have to happen apart from some patches. So at this point, I've put a lot of screws underneath the lower edge of this into the angle iron that I had welded onto the frame. Everything worked out really nice there. There was a spot to attach every piece. I did make some new sections. You can see over here, there's a shiny one here. I didn't film that, but there's some new sections made up there. I just used the old ones for templates, and I rolled them in a slip roller, and everything fits pretty good. It's not perfect, but it wasn't perfect before. So I'm gonna call it good. The next step here is to reattach this trim. You can see this gold line here, that's where the trim was, just like the trim up on top. I wanted to make sure everything was set first, and so I'm gonna have to do this in sections. I will add butyl tape to the back, and then I'll have to pre-drill through the steel frame, and I'll add new screws all the way down. So I'm gonna start with the pieces I can do myself, and then eventually I'll see if I can get some help and do some of these big hoops that go like around the front and everything that are gonna be a little tricky. So the idea here is I don't wanna take out all the screws that I added on the top. I only have a handful in, but they're kind of holding it in place, so I need to be careful that I only remove them as I go, and I'll have to kind of flex the metal out to make sure that all of the pieces stay put. So let me show you the materials we're working with, and we'll do this first one together, and then I'll jump to some time lapses. Okay, we're gonna use the trailer as a little tabletop here. This is a piece of trim I've got. I've got all the old screws out of this all the way down. We're gonna use this butyl tape, and I'm just gonna run a bead all the way down. This gets real heavy once it's got tape on it. So we'll get butyl tape on that, and then we'll go ahead and start putting it on. Okay, so an important part before I do this is knowing which is the front and which is the back. And so I've kind of double checked to figure out which goes where. And I think I've got this the right way. So I know that I've got at least one hole that's already drilled because it was previously holding this on. So I could start it there, and I think I might do that, but I also need to get one on the end here. If I had another set of hands, it'd be a little easier, but I probably want to start at the end and work my way down for the sake of making sure that I don't accidentally bump this into the side and get it stuck. But because it's going to be easier with one set of hands, I'm going to go ahead and use this old hole. And so these screws are a little bit big even for the holes on these. These are oversized screws for what was on here, so that I make sure that they actually grab. So this is a little tricky to get right, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so that's attached. The bottom piece stayed put just like I wanted. I was able to use all the old screws that I put in to kind of pin this bottom, and added one extra. And so now I'm just gonna go along and drill and screw every single hole. Okay, so this piece is on. It's looking good. It's a little ripply. I think that's just kind of a product of the fact that wherever a screw is, it pulls in a little. I sighted down it and tightened anything that looked like it was out. So I think it'll work. The other step kind of involved in this, you can see how this butyl tape is oozed out the top, which is great. That means that it is fully sealed, and really this spot here is probably the only one that it didn't come shooting out the top, and I can still see it. It's just below the top. So that means we have a good seal all the way down. Now, if it were cooler out, I would probably just go down and scrape all this off right now. It actually comes off pretty easy right now. It's maybe 75 degrees, so it's not too bad. This stuff can get really sticky when you start getting up over 80, 85 degrees. So this is coming up better than I would have guessed. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I think probably it's going to work its way out a little bit, just from the pressure of all these screws. I think a little bit shot out at first, and then it's just going to keep going. So I'm probably going to come back at the end and just do all of this. This will be a nice mindless project when I just don't really feel like doing a lot. We'll come along, we'll scrape all this out, and then this is sealed. No caulk needed. When I started this project, this is an area I thought I was going to kind of cheat If you watched my paint stripping video, I came along with little screwdrivers and scraped this clean. I scraped the old butyl tape clean so I could prime right down to it. I was going to caulk it because I was trying to avoid taking out every single screw. However, when I started noticing leaks, I realized that that really was ridiculous to just not do this while I'm here. And that's, you know, again, the theme of this project. If I had done this before I primed, it'd be a lot better, because now I'm gonna have some spots that require touch up. There's gonna be a lot of touch ups, a lot of stuff like that. So I knew if I didn't strip the paint first, I was not going to want to do that by the time I got to it. So I'm still thinking that was probably the right choice, but there's gonna be a lot of primer touch up on this. It is what it is. Now I just have to go around and do all the rest of them. Once I got all these bottom pieces on, I've just been chipping away at sealing up all the rest of these trim pieces. If I was going to take this all the way, and I've said this before, if I was going to take this all the way, all this sheet metal would come off. I'm not doing that. This is an aluminum frame. A lot of things are riveted on. There are certain things I'm not going to be able to seal, and so I'm probably going to caulk. However, these trim strips, I kind of decided it was probably worth pulling these off and sealing the backs. Now, originally, these are not sealed on the back. Some of them have like a sealant along the top, but they do not have butyl tape. However, some of the leaks I've had on the inside were from the screw holes. And so when I removed those pieces, put butyl tape in, and then put it back on, it solved that. Now, I've also upsized these screws. I think the old ones were number 8s. I've gone to number 10s just to make sure they're a snug fit. It's kind of a pain. It's hundreds and hundreds of screws. I think I'm 500 screws in, and I'm maybe halfway. All right, so a little update on where we're at. We've got all of the trims on the outside have now been removed, re-butyl taped, and put back on with new screws. That was super monotonous. I didn't film all of it just because it wasn't very exciting. The only part that I haven't done that to is the very back. So let me show you why. Okay, you can see here the butyl tape oozing out on top of these. I'm gonna wait till it's cooler to come back and cut that off. And then you can see it stops right here. There's a seam. This goes all the way around the back. Another seam here. This goes all the way around the back. And then another seam here. And this goes all the way around the back. So all of these screws tie into the wood that is or was behind here. This bottom one ties into the frame. So that one's in. But that one actually goes into metal too, but I just haven't done it yet. We have to rebuild all of the wood behind this before I'm going to take all these off.